Kyle Busch was one of the toughest drivers NASCAR had ever produced. He had just won his 234th race. 6 days later, he was dead. His family was told something that made his death almost impossible to comprehend. A doctor looked at Kurt Busch and said 3 words: 1 in a million. But what makes this story even more disturbing is what Kyle was doing just days before he died, and what he was planning for the future. How does a 41-year-old elite athlete go from winning a race to fighting for his life in a matter of days? That is the question NASCAR has been unable to answer. And Kurt Busch just exposed everything. To understand the full story, we have to go back to the racetrack, back to the hospital, and back to a brotherhood that needed no words. 234 combined wins. 2 Cup Series championships. One of NASCAR's greatest drivers. Kyle Busch was born and raised in Las Vegas. Known throughout the garage as Rowdy, fiercely competitive, polarizing, and deeply beloved. He won the Cup Series title in 2015 and 2019 with Joe Gibbs Racing. Behind the helmet was a different man entirely. He was married to Samantha Busch, with whom he endured nearly a decade of infertility struggles before welcoming son Brexton, 11, and daughter Lennox, 4. In his final months, Kyle's identity was quietly shifting from champion to father, from competitor to mentor. And Kyle had already planned what his life after NASCAR would look like. The plan involved his 11-year-old son Brexton, but we will get there. His older brother, Kurt Busch, inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame in January 2026, is the only Cup Series driver in history to win with 4 different manufacturers. At that induction ceremony, Kyle stood beside him and said, "I've been there since the beginning and seen every battle, pass, and win to get to this point. Our family name is cemented in NASCAR history forever. Congrats, big bro." Kurt later reflected on what that bond meant. Him and I were carbon copies of each other. We could speak on track without saying a word. That brotherhood would soon be tested in the worst possible way. The warning signs started on May 10 at Watkins Glen, New York. Kyle was clearly unwell. He was heard over team radio asking for Bill Heisel, a longtime sports physician's assistant. He requested to meet at his motorhome after the race. "I'm going to need a shot," he said. The broadcast described it as a sinus cold aggravated by G-forces. He finished 8th. He said nothing more publicly. He raced sick. He finished. He went home. The following weekend, May 17, he returned to Dover, Delaware. He won. His record 234th combined win, the last of his career. He crossed the finish line in first place. 6 days later, he was gone. Kyle's death certificate later confirmed he had bacterial pneumonia for days to weeks before his death. Brad Keselowski admitted he had noticed Kyle was sick. But watching him win at Dover had made him dismiss his concerns entirely. He obviously executed at a very high level, winning one of the races. So I kind of was very dismissive of that. Everyone was. On May 20, at the General Motors Technical Facility in Concord, North Carolina, Kyle was practicing in a racing simulator. He became increasingly ill. His crew chief heard him coughing violently from the bathroom and asked, "Are you all right?" Kyle answered, "No." At 5:32 p.m., a 911 call was placed. The caller described Kyle coughing up blood, suffering shortness of breath. Lying awake on the bathroom floor, very hot, thinks he's going to pass out. An ambulance was called immediately. His death certificate outlined what happened inside his body. Bacterial pneumonia had been building for days to weeks. It progressed into sepsis within 1 day. That triggered disseminated intravascular coagulation, causing abnormal clotting throughout his blood vessels. That led to hemorrhagic shock within hours. According to the CDC, sepsis is the body's extreme response to an infection, a life-threatening chain reaction. He was hospitalized at Atrium Health Carolinas Medical Center. On May 21, Kurt Busch was at the hospital. All day. Hoping, praying, his final words to his brother were, "I got you, man, come on. I got you. I got you, come on. Be strong." Wiping tears on the Today Show, Kurt added, "It just wasn't fair." Their father, Tom Busch, chose not to visit the hospital. Kurt explained his father's decision without judgment. My dad wanted to remember him in the way that he wanted to remember him. Both choices spoke to the same unbearable grief. On May 23, the family released their official statement: severe pneumonia progressed into sepsis, resulting in rapid and overwhelming associated complications. Kyle Busch was 41 years old. Days later, Kurt met with Kyle's doctors in Charlotte. It was in that room that a doctor told him something that reframed everything. Kyle's death, the result of rapidly worsening pneumonia, was 1 in a million. Kurt's response was direct. That's what makes all of this so frustrating and difficult to accept. A treatable-sounding illness. A 1 in a million outcome. No roadmap forward. There is no book. There is no outline on what we're supposed to do right now, Kurt said. The grief was no longer just about loss. It was about impossibility. But one question has haunted NASCAR fans ever since. Why did Kyle keep racing when his body was already telling him something was wrong? Kurt answered plainly, "We're independent contractors. We don't have a union. The fear of losing your seat is the unspoken rule of the garage." Former driver Kyle Petty explained the deeper truth: there's a flaw in the driver's DNA. Somewhere in our DNA, we never, ever believe it's going to happen to us. Reigning Cup champion Kyle Larson defended Kyle Busch directly. From what I understand, he was seeking out and getting tested for whatever. I don't want people to think that he wasn't taking care of himself. Bubba Wallace was even more direct. "No one's ever getting in my car unless I'm dead. It's literally got to be death." He backed those words with his own story. In 2010, Wallace competed while battling swine flu. What he discovered stayed with him. "When I got in the car, I felt fine." For some reason, you feel better in the car. This mentality runs deeper than any one driver. In 1984, Ricky Rudd suffered rib injuries and severe eye swelling. His eyes had to be taped open just so he could see. He finished 7th in the Daytona 500. 1 week later, he returned to Richmond and won. This is the culture Kyle Busch was born into, and ultimately, the culture he never escaped. After the Dover Cup race, Kyle and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. sat together in rental cars at Wilmington Airport and talked about the future. Despite past conflicts, the conversation was unusually personal. Stenhouse later told ESPN, "He had this whole succession plan and he stayed more busy doing that than he did anything else. Anytime we were talking, it was about Brexton racing." He was definitely more happy talking about Brexton racing than anything else. The plan was detailed. Kyle intended to leave full-time Cup Series competition, pursue a Truck Series championship, race alongside Brexton, and then transition into coaching his son full-time. Denny Hamlin captured what was driving Kyle in those final months. It's very easy to be content with the amount of wins and accomplishments that he had. You're like, what's the difference between 60 and 70 wins? Nobody cares. I think he was finding just as much accomplishment and sense of achievement when his kid would be racing. But racing had also been part of his life for so long that I think it did scare him, thinking about the end. 3 days after that airport conversation, Kyle was in the hospital. The plan he had spent years building became a glimpse of a future that would never arrive. Kyle spent his final months preparing for a future he would never see. A future where he was no longer chasing trophies, he was chasing his son's dreams. Brexton Busch returned to competition in June, weeks after his father's death. On July 17, he earned his first victory after losing his father a micro-sprint race in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Kurt has stepped in as mentor. His assessment was clear. He's a prodigy. He was on the gas even before all of this. He can be a big star in the world of motorsports. He's 11, but he's already racing like an 18-year-old. So it's time to be around a bit more. Exactly 3 months after Kyle's death, the Kyle Busch Invitational was held at Bowman Gray Stadium. Samantha Busch addressed the crowd. "These past few months have been the hardest of our lives." She spoke of what the sport meant to her husband. He loved this place, its history, and the energy here. But more than anything, Kyle loved grassroots racing. It was where his love for this sport began. She closed with the words Kyle would have chosen. "Racing will never be the same without him." Our lives will never be the same without him. So tonight, let's do exactly what Kyle would have wanted. We race on. Kurt knows exactly what he wants the world to remember about his brother. It's already there, winningest driver in NASCAR history in all the series. The tenacity that he had it was every day, 24/7, to help people in the latter part of his career, to be a great father like he was. It will all shine as time puts different things in spotlights. His tribute was equally powerful. Kyle, your passion, determination, and love for your family inspired everyone who knew you. No trophy, championship, or accomplishment could ever measure the impact you had on my life and on so many others. My heart is broken, but I know your spirit will always ride with me. And his most haunting reflection, I miss the words that we never spoke to each other and the vibe that we had on track. On moving forward, Kurt said simply, there's usually going to be a discussion when I see someone. But it's all right. We're going to get through it. Time heals. 1 in a million. A treatable illness. An unstoppable man. And a sport that never slows down even when it should. Kyle's racing career ended suddenly. But the legacy he was building never did. Now Kurt Busch is helping carry that dream forward. And perhaps that is the hardest part of this entire story. Rest easy, Rowdy. The whole sport is riding with you. This channel is new, and stories like this take real time and care to tell. If this video meant something to you, please like it and subscribe. We are working toward 2,000 subscribers, and your support makes every story possible. The link to the Bundle of Joy Fund is in the description below. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think NASCAR's culture of racing through injury and illness needs to change? Could anything have saved Kyle Busch? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.